If you are into extreme sports and can't even spend a day without an adrenaline surge, then cold weather, fear, and even injuries are not an issue for you, just like for these guys. Trying to realize that you're cruising on ice instead of solid ground was quite a tough challenge. I got the feeling that I was literally going out of my mind while going the first couple of rides. The episode of today's program is about adrenaline-fueled sports on ice. Are you ready to check out the skills of Ukrainian riders on ice? Hi guys! Hello! What are your names and what are you going to tell us today? I'm Taras. Sergey. Today we're at the KFC and we're going to tell you about riding a motorcycle on ice in the winter. Motocross on ice is riding a motocross bike on the surface of a frozen lake or sea. The purpose of riding a bike on ice is maintaining riding skills in the winter months. A lot of people in Ukraine are into motocross. In fact, there are many more people interested in this winter form of motocross on ice than in standard motorcycle sports. There are truly many fanatics of riding on ice, although there are not as many as in the summer months. In winter, you should ride on both cross-country tracks made specifically for riding on ice to keep up your skills. Riding on a track with slippery turns in the summer is very good for training for riding on ice in the winter. The essence of riding on ice is in dosing the amount of acceleration and balancing on the bike. I started fairly recently. I ride for fun and try to learn to control the bike on a basic level. I have enjoyed engaging in motocross and riding on motorcycles since I was a kid, but I couldn't start in my childhood because my parents were against it. It is only recently that I had an opportunity to start practicing and developing in this form of sport, just for myself, and at the same time getting the thrill and feeling the adrenaline surge. Perhaps this is because it is challenging and interesting at the same time. In motocross, I like jumps the most. I can't say I'm great at jumps or even good at riding, but it's an amazing feeling when you do it right. I really like the sense of the drift on ice, because when your tires are properly studded, or if you have some really fancy tires, then you can ride on the bike and control its drift in a way that is simply impossible to do on the dry ground when you're riding in the summer months. As far as I can recall, I became interested in motorsports in my youth, when I went for the first time to check out a motocross race. I'm from Chernivtsi, and we have tracks there on which European and World Championships regularly take place. So I went to see this event and it was totally awesome. I can't even describe my feelings. After that, it got stuck in my head. And when I could finally afford it, I started riding myself, although I was 22 by then. I guess I'm a professional freestyler. It's a motocross discipline that involves jumping and performing certain acrobatic elements or tricks. Call it what you like. I got into motocross on ice thanks to Sergey. I have minimal experience here, but I go riding when the boys go. I'd say that freestyle is my job. While motocross on ice is for recreation. I think any new experience gives people enjoyment if it's connected with their favorite occupation. Motocross on ice lets me feel the bike differently, in some more exotic conditions. And there cannot be anything more fun or interesting. After all, it's a bike, it's fun on ice, and it's really cool.
Це не може бути не цікаво. Це мотоцикли, це мотокрос, це лід. Круто.
My dad was into bike racing at some point, so he made me a moped when I was a kid, so I could learn to ride. I rode for a couple years, but then my parents couldn't afford that anymore. I dreamt of buying my own bike, and I finally did that when I earned the money for it myself. I think it was in 2008. I started with motocross, and then I got interested in freestyle and riding in winter. You can call it winter motocross or motocross on ice. It is really a cool feeling when you're controlling the bike while it is drifting on ice. There are actually quite a lot of various schools and coaches in Ukraine that train specifically in motocross, and I think that if they wanted, they could easily train riders or even beginners on ice. But before riding on ice, it is advisable that you learn how to ride a bike and switch gears, seeing as riding on a cross-country track or ice requires both physical training and riding skills. There are schools and coaches in Ukraine who train athletes from scratch, and there are also those who can achieve certain results in short periods of time. It's worth noting that you have to train on a regular basis in order to maintain your level of skill, just as it is in any other sport. I had no experience whatsoever riding a motorcycle before I got into motocross. I started with a coach. Hello, Anatoly. Thanks to him, I learned the basic skills of riding a bike, which involved mastering the toughest skills of riding, so to speak. Those lessons were very useful and quite beneficial for me. The training consisted of driving to the track and doing 1 or 2 warm-up rides. The purpose of one of the rides was to get a handle of certain elements, such as sharp turns or jumps. Riding on ice is more monotonous and consists of cornering and riding in a straight line at a very high speed. I didn't start the right way. I started with a large motorcycle at a fairly late age, and many consider it too late to begin at that age. But one way or another, I passed the first training stages. Maybe I was a bit lucky, or I just wasn't as young and reckless and took a more serious approach to training.
Скажімо, юним і безшабашним, більше з розумом підходив до тренувань. Тобто рік приблизно був
I spent about a year on motocross. Then I focused on freestyle, and motocross remained as an addition to that training with just a few training sessions a year.
А на лід вже знову ж таки Сергій.
Sergey introduced me to riding on ice. He opened up my eyes to a new experience. He's really skilled at riding on ice, so I watch him and try to repeat what he does. You should always have someone to look up to. The fact of the matter is that you always need someone who is better than you in life and in sports.
Потрібна людина, яка сильніша за тебе.
I started with motocross on a clearing. I just learned to drive, turn and switch gears, like with any other vehicle. Then I gradually switched to special tracks and then to ice when the winter set in.
Перешел на специальные трассы и зимой вот на лед.
At the very beginning, my father was my coach, and after that, I became my own coach. The most difficult part of riding on ice for me was in learning to feel the moment when the tires lost traction. I got the hang of that at the basic level in the first training session. Trying to realize that I was riding on ice instead of solid ground was pretty hard. I was slightly confused, stumbling during the first couple of rides. Then I stopped accelerating and was trying to turn without drifting, but the main goal was to start drifting and balance on it. I finally understood that drifting on ice is the main goal in this difficult sport.
Найскладніше було звикнути, це було лише
The hardest part was getting used to this new method of handling and all the new tricks of the trade. Back then I had studded tires that Sergey made, and the front tire did not stick to the ice well enough to maintain the traction. So I constantly had the feeling that I was going into a low slide and would fall off the bike. That was the most frightening and disturbing feeling in this whole process.
Це для мене було найбільш таке тривожне відчуття.
I experimented a lot with rubber because there are many different kinds of such material. We made studded tires with our own hands using screws. There were a lot of options there, and we tried using factory-made screws. Difficulties? Well, as for the difficulties, it's slippery, so steering is pretty hard. You have to accelerate smoothly and gradually learn to drift.
Так учиться скользить, учиться дрифтить.
Мы готовились довольно долго.
It took us quite a while to prepare for the first ride on ice. Frost had covered the waters of the Kiev Sea, and we should have long before bought studded tires. But we didn't, so we had to order several sets from Europe, which was harder than we thought, and we went riding on ice with the boys. We also brought a snowboarder along and dragged him in the snow on a rope. We had a great time back then. The snow there was pristine. Nobody had ridden or walked on it, and it covered the ice perfectly. So we made a great track in just 2 rides and spent all day there, riding and simply having a good time.
И целый день тут провисели, катаясь и получая удовольствие.
I remember the first time I came here to ride on ice was after I fell pretty hard in Nuremberg. That was connected with my work, with freestyle. I had to take a long break, after which I had to get back to riding on ice. So Serhiy offered me to join him and go riding on ice. Then we came to this place. What do I like about this particular place? It is very quiet and serene here. And in some way it is quite a bit different from the standard cross-country trails.
Трошки по-іншому, ніж зазвичай на кросових трасах.
It must be a pond without currents and with good thick ice, just like this place. Preferably far from residential buildings and fishermen, because it causes discomfort for them when someone starts riding a bike and creating some kind of unpleasant noise pollutions for local inhabitants. The most important part is choosing the right place to organize this event. The right place is the key to success. First of all, you must be sure that the ice is thick enough, so that the bikes won't fall through the cracks in the ice. You should also mark a trajectory with traffic cones or some other reference points to follow it on a bike. In theory, you can do it on your own, but you should go with a group of people because you're going to ride a bike yourself, and there's always the risk of an accident and injury. In any case, the place where you're going to ride along will not be densely populated. So in case something happens to you, there should be people around that will be there to help you in an emergency. I rode in Kiev on the Desenka, but there should be a cold winter because the river is quite deep there. I also rode on the Svetoshina lake, but local fishermen were not too fond of us, so we were forced to leave. We watch athletes who ride abroad, especially in such northern countries as Finland and Sweden. Riding bikes on ice is very popular there. I'm sure they have competition at the yard level, so to speak. It is just starting to develop in our country, since not everyone has the time or ability to order certain components, like studded tires. Nevertheless, quite a lot of motocross riders are attracted to such an adventurous challenge of going riding bikes on ice.